Welcome to the Golden Keys. I'm your host, Trent Zimmer, alongside my beautiful wife, Karissa. We delve into the fascinating world of life in Minnesota, parenting, entrepreneurship, and real estate. We are passionate learners, and we love to share the lessons, knowledge, and experiences with you. Whether you're a parent looking for community, an entrepreneur seeking inspiration and guidance, or a real estate enthusiast looking to stay up to date with the latest trends and developments, the Golden Keys has something for you. Join us as we share insights, stories, and wisdom on this engaging and informative show. So sit back, enjoy the show, and let's go open some doors. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We have two really cool guests today. It's kind of a weird situation where I think this is a really awesome thing that we're talking about this, but it's also a really sad thing that we're talking about this. But the reality is it's real, right? And so I've got Jason Polinsky and Peter Matos, and we are going to be talking about 3D response systems, which is a system that is designed to, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher this, limit life loss in these tragedies that we're seeing around the country. And before I talk and ruin what it actually is, I'm going to turn it over to these guys because they're the professionals. Start with telling me about you as an individual, how you got to this point.
Started as a police officer back in '94. I'm actually a Lakeville grad. I kind of spent my whole life in Lakeville. Got promoted to school resource officer in the early 2000s. And this was shortly after Columbine. I was also going back to grad school at the time. And I had read a thesis paper, and I chose the topic of active shooter response, because it wasn't really, at the time, you got to keep in mind that the police response and the school response was not really existing for this specific incident, and it's evolved over the years since then. But at the time I wrote my paper, I researched Columbine and shootings prior to. I found a big misconception is the actual first school shooting was in the late 1700s, and it kind of carried through. So when people say this is a new concept, it truly is not. It's been around for hundreds of years, and it's just never been addressed. So after writing my thesis paper, I was actually one of the first person in my hometown to bring a response training to both police and the educators. Run, hide, fight did not exist. It was more of a lockdown type drill. Again, that evolution of response has changed now to run, hide, fight and solo officer entry. So it really became kind of a passion of mine, starting with the school resource officer position and then having children of my own. I found myself telling my kids to do one thing, but then going and teaching 1,500 people on doing something completely different. And I was telling my kids, just get out because the building doesn't support it. I didn't trust the concept of hide. So I was telling my boys, if something happens, you run as fast as you can. You don't listen to the teachers, you just go. So in about 2014-ish, Pete and I decided to make a change. And, how do we take what the police are doing and how do we take what we're teaching these staff members to do and how do we put it on steroids? And how do we keep as many people safe as possible, get the cops there faster, provide the tools for the innocent? And it took about, 3 years or so of research and development and a lot of arguments with fire marshals on what we could and couldn't do. And we finally came up with a system that you currently see in some schools around the metro area here now.
How many schools are you guys in?
16, 17, and then we have 1, 2, 3 more kind of on the burner. 2 more contracts, and then a couple in the air that we're meeting with. And then we also branched over to a medical clinic as well.
Oh,
so
awesome.
we're being looked at for professional buildings too.
And the 16 to 17 schools are all in the state of Minnesota?
Yep.
Correct.
That's awesome.
So Pete, where do you come in? Where did you, I know it looks like you guys in 2014 is kind of when you came into the picture, but what that looked like when you guys came together on this.
We started out even a little bit earlier than that, but I'm retired now in law enforcement for 31 years. I worked in several different police departments, and urban and suburban police departments. And Jason and I knew that Jason had quite a bit of experience and knowledge in the schools and that whole arena. So we started kind of putting our heads together and looking at this problem and going, okay, well, what if this? What if that? How can we come up with a solution that's more um, multi multi-layered than just kind of a one-trick pony? And so we started getting into this topic deeper, and we had a lot of trial and error early on with different ideas and stuff, and then we came up with this concept of multi-layered, kind of following suit with the fire suppression type system. And Jason in his presentation goes a little bit into the issues, going way back to 1958 with the fire in Chicago and how a multi-layered system for fire saves lives. And so we thought, well, why can't we do that with violence? And so we started really digging deeper into this, and we had a couple other people on our team that, had an expertise in a certain area. And so we started just asking, what if this, what if that, and trying to figure out the best utilitarian approach to solve this problem. So that's kind of how we got going on it. And then we've been going on it hard ever since. And again, Jason has a pretty extensive experience in this, and he studied this. And so we kind of, I had a background in SWAT and training and things like that. So we kind of started to put the two areas together with training for staff and whatnot. And so that's kind of how we ended up where we are now.
So explain what multi-layered means. When you say a multi-layered system and it works in fire, what is that, and how does it work in violence?
We actually didn't plan on doing that. So we started with more of kind of we brought in stakeholders. We brought in, okay, who does this affect the most? And the answer that we found is it's obviously the educators, it's the police officers, it's the fire department, it's medics, it's structural people. And we started brainstorming, and to kind of put the response on steroids, so to speak, we ended up just kind of naturally creating a multi-layered design. And what it was we'd look at, like Pete talked about, the what if stuff. So we'd go, okay, what if it starts here? And then we would kind of try to creatively think, how do we prevent it if it starts in the gym? How do we keep the kids safe that are in the gym or in the rest of the building? And then we plunk those layers to handle that tackle. And one of my frustrations right now is every time there's an incident, the country is trying to fix what just happened. So if Texas, the guy in Uvalde, he came through a door that was unlocked, well, the answer now is single point entry. And now Tennessee, she shot her way through the glass, so now it's back to vestibules. So it's never focused on the building as a whole. It's always focused on what just happened. And the problem is what just happened never really happens again. So to go back to the multi-layered stuff, when we got all done, we took kind of a 30,000 foot view at what we created. And basically it's a fire suppression system for a threat rather than a fire. It's an active shooter or a person with a gun. And the interesting part about that is if you go back and you look through history, the fire code was written in the early 1900s, was not enforced until 1958 when a fire in Chicago took the lives of 98 children and staff at Our Lady of the Angel School. And after that fire, the fire code was enforced, and they said every building needs to have this layered approach to keeping people safe from a fire in their buildings. Since that code was enforced, there's been not one death to a child in a school in this nation. So if you look at the way they approached it, it was, in my opinion, the blueprint has always been there. It was the fire code. And the fire code is designed to put the fire out, contain the fire, give tools to the people inside to get to safety, and also get the fire department there faster. Our system does the same thing. You're providing the tools for people inside to stay safe. You're getting the police there faster. And it wasn't meant, we didn't look at the fire suppression. It wasn't done intentionally. It ended up being that, which was interesting.
It's the same concept as, like cars. You got seatbelts, multiple airbags, all this lane keeping assistance, all these different features to keep people from being involved in an accident. Same thing for aircraft safety. When you go fly somewhere, you got all the seatbelt and you got all these procedures you got to go through, and just multiple layers. And so that's one of the concepts that we built off of as well.
So this system then is building specific, right? It's not a one size fits all. You have to look at the building as a whole and come up with solutions as to how you're going to best protect that building and the people inside it should something like this happen. So
Yeah.
with that said, if you're looking, I'm assuming so that districts are the ones, at least in the public schools, are making these decisions to put these systems into their schools. How long, let's say, if a district decided to, okay, we're going to invest in this, how long would it take you guys as a team to analyze each individual school within that district and install the system?
You opened a can of worms there. So it's kind of it's not as simple as so to answer it at kind of a ground level. Once the school district or the whoever wants it in there gave us the green light, we can get the designs done within a couple of weeks, probably per building.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have 3 different phases. It's the design phase, the construction phase, and then the training phase. So the can of worms, and I'm going to be a little blunt here. The can of worms is we're having so much more success with the private schools and the private companies than we are with public schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it an invisible wall. I don't really understand it, but it seems like we meet with public schools and the first layer of meetings is excitement and we have to do this. And then there's this invisible wall, and the answer we get is we're not interested at this time. And we're not interested in the foreseeable future. But then in a year from now, I look at their referendum and they're asking for new artificial turf or a pool. So I really question priorities there. But then we go over to the private side, and I'm not saying this to rip on anybody. This is just honest.
It's just facts.
I go over to the private side, and we're welcomed with open arms, and they can't wait to start. And they are going out for grants, and they're going out for fundraising to get us in their schools because they want it so bad, and that is their number one priority is the safety of their kids. Mm-hmm. Which is great. It's frustrating to me that why aren't both sides on that same page? I don't get it. If it's politics or if it's mindset or what the reason is, I don't know. But public schools are a tough egg to crack.
Well, there's multiple people that you have to go through, I'm sure.
Red tape, I assume. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the first school that you guys ever installed this system was a private school, correct?
Yes.
Correct. Yep. And going back to the customization thing, every school is different. You have old buildings that have a lot of brick. You have, some newer buildings that have a lot of sheetrock, and then you have the open concept schools. And so every building design is a little bit different and takes some time to kind of figure out what's the best way to make this particular building as safe as it can be. So that's something that we do as a team. We look at as many different angles to make that design as safe as possible.
That's cool.
Jason, you mentioned in the third phase, it's training staff. And I remember when I was on the tour, I got to take a tour with Rotary. And that was one of my questions was, how do teachers take this? Because it's got to be, one, a little scary, a little emotional. If this ever happens, is it so simple that their instinct kicks in and they're able to just complete the tasks they need to complete to make sure everybody what is the training like for staff and how have they received this system?
It's interesting because I've been teaching Run, Hide, Fight for so long without the system. I saw more anxiety without than I do with. And I think I know for a fact that teachers have great anxiety with making the decision to run or hide. They don't want, I think, when you have 30 little people under your care and it's a life or death moment and they don't have any tools and you're under stress, that's not a good feeling to be in for if you're an educator and you have to make that decision that all these kids depend on what I do next. That stresses them out. So I think now with our system, the fact that they have a plan and the fact that the plan is so simple, literally push a button, just push the button. I think it's relief to them. And prior to it, it's kind of organized chaos with a lot of luck involved. And now you take luck out of it, bring back some organization, and you have a plan. You know exactly what you're supposed to do. It's more relieving than it is anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about it like that. That's to not have to make that call and possibly have, I guess, blood on your hands in some way, right? Like you tell kids to do one thing and it goes horribly. You made that decision. So in this case, you hit the blue button, the door shuts, and it's kind of the only decision they have to make in a way.
Yeah, one of the things, we try to make it as easy. Again, going back to the what ifs, we're trying to think of as many different scenarios that affect so many people as possible. For a teacher, I mean, you're talking about a violent situation, and where your mind is dealing with an incredible amount of stress. People's fine motor skills go out the window, and they can't think. Some people will just freeze in place. Some people will run. Some people will just have, it's a variety of different responses. And so we try to make it as easy as possible. So you really don't have to do many things, and you're going to still be safe right there with your kids. So those are some of the things, I mean, we're looking at it from a law enforcement perspective, but we're also looking at it from the user's perspective. We want to make this as easy and stress-free for you as possible. So, and, some of that involves the training that we do as well. We'll do like, the reality-based training stuff, and we'll put the teachers in the position as close to the kind of the real thing as possible. We'll have them actually walk through all the sequences of things that they're going to do to see how they're going to react, and that's a really important part of the training phase that we do with every school.
Have you, I would assume you guys have done, and I know you've done a few because I remember you talking about them at the tour, but some case studies as to how the system would perform in some of these events that have already happened. I found that stuff to be fascinating. If you would be open to talking about sort of some of these big, most recent events and how your system would have fared in those cases, I think that would be really impactful.
Yeah, Jason, if you want to talk about that Nashville one, I mean, that one was like textbook that how our system would apply. But yeah, Jason has put together some of those studies as well. But go ahead, Jason. I'll let you.
I can go into, well, kind of historical too, like the most recent one in Nashville. What I do is I go back and I usually wait for the FBI or a law enforcement report to come out that goes into detail of kind of suspect footprints on where they walked and what their actions were. So if they put us in Tennessee, that person is not getting through the front. It stops in the vestibule. It's not going anywhere. And cops are on the way, probably in that case, 5 to 10 minutes earlier than they were. And then you go to Uvalde. His first shots were fired outside. That would have alerted the school to activate the system. Even with the back door open, he's walking into a ghost town. Everybody's protected behind magnetically sealed doors. They're behind ballistic protection. I don't care if that back door is open or not. He walks into pretty much zero targets. The target-rich environment has been removed instantly, and he has nobody to target. So I think in those two incidents, our system would have come out with a absolutely greater positive outcome than they did. You go back to like Columbine, and now you're talking a completely different type of entry where they had a plan and there were supposed to be bombs that were going to go off in the cafeteria. That didn't work, so they decided to walk up to the door. There was a couple kids outside having lunch, like a picnic type lunch, and those were the first two victims that would have activated the system. And then once the system's activated, the intruder has about 30 seconds and he's not going to have any targets if everybody does what they're supposed to with our system in place. So it's not a guarantee that it's going to save everybody, but we do say it will minimize the loss of life. The element of surprise is always starts off with the hand of the person who wants to do harm, but that power can be taken back pretty quickly if you have the right tools to do so. So pretty much over the course of time, I plunked this into a lot of shootings, and without hesitation, I can say every outcome would be greatly different than what the actual outcome was if they had the tools to do it.
It kind of glazed over a little bit of the run, hide, fight, but that's kind of, they call it run, hide, fight, like this is this national standard. And if you think about it, what would you normally do if a violent incident occurred? You're either going to run and get away from it, or you're going to hide somewhere. And if it's right on top of you, you might fight if you have the mindset to do that. But they've dubbed that a particular system, and we look at that and we go, the schools, the buildings don't support that. So what we aim to do is enhance the buildings so that they can support that. So we kind of didn't really get too much into that, but that's really important thing to remember, these violent situations, wherever it is, whether it's in a private business, a school, wherever.
You guys have heard of fight or flee, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, you think about, minimizing your phone being out in schools with kids and teachers. So when something like that happens, you're reliant, and the system is not in place, you're reliant on the first person that can get to a phone and look at it and call 911. And so,
try to do that under stress too, trust your
goodness, I can't
get
imagine.
in there. Yeah, you're watching something unfold and you're going to try to dial 911 and talk to a dispatcher, when you're watching something happening in front of you, and it's too much. It's overload for your mind.
Totally. And you're trying to take care of the kids in front of you. So that requires you to put your eyes down to dial the number and hold it up to your head or put it on speaker. I mean, there's just so many things that you need to do and do perfectly in a timely manner, where this just eliminates all of that. So I heard about a malfunction in our community with I shouldn't say malfunction, but someone either pushed button, probably got in big trouble for it.
The system worked.
And the system worked flawlessly. That kid probably had a talking to, but that was really cool to see that in action, even though it was a false alarm. It just, the comfort of like, hey, yeah, this works.
Are you talking the one in the private school?
Yeah, I think it was a private school. Someone in middle school pushed it or something.
So interesting you bring that up. I got a phone call from the principal because he was getting calls from parents afterwards, basically demanding for armed security in the schools. And not after that, it was after the Tennessee one. And he didn't know how to answer that. And Pete and I just had a discussion about, a lot of people take an idea they think will work and they throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. And there is a lot of uneducated minds throwing that concept out there. If I had to choose between our system or an armed person, I would choose the system. Mm-hmm. The reason is the system provides the tools for the kids. There's so many variables that go into the concept of arming somebody. I'm not going to go into, I can give you some. We qualify 3 times a year. We do gun retention where we're fighting with the gun and we can't let the gun get away. We do psychological backgrounds. What else, Pete?
Just the amount of training,
accuracy, the whole 9 yards. And the liability that comes with that. And then if you're looking to, like, if you take a school the size of Lakeville North or even Lakeview Elementary School, you can have shots being fired on one of the school and the other in the school is going to have no idea what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that person who is the response to it is going to get there way too late. And he didn't give the kids any tools to get through that first 2 minutes. And that's the most important time, is those first initial seconds is going to save lives. And the gun still has to get there. So when that alarm went off, the first officer was there under 2 minutes, and all the kids were behind magnetically sealed doors, ballistic features, and about 8 other layers going off. The system did what it was supposed to do. The cops got there way faster than they ever had before. So you do technically have an armed response. It's called a police officer in a squad car coming to you at 100 miles an hour minutes before they have in the past.
Right.
So ideally it's the combination of a school resource officer and our system combined. Mm-hmm. But there's not enough, I think, to house every school in this nation with an armed person is kind of far-fetched.
Armed and
quality
trained and continued education. Like, I mean, we're real estate professionals. We take continuing education every week, every month, right? But someone who wants to just go sell their home and puts a sign in the yard and tries to do it for sale by owner, that's a whole different ballgame. So, yeah.
It's kind of like the analogy of, law enforcement now is going through a struggle of getting people to even apply for a job. And what's going to happen is you're going to end up with some departments they just need bodies. Well, if you don't put the money into those bodies and train them up, you are going to pay for it at the end via a lawsuit. So if you don't put the money up front, you're going to pay more in the end because you're not putting the right people in there. And that's a challenge to get. A conceal and carry person with no training is not the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we've what if as many of these scenarios to death, and we look at, trying to, you get these knee-jerk reactions like we're going to arm every school and all this kind of stuff. Well, you're not thinking about all those other factors, and it's very frustrating watching this unfold, around us with all these different ideas of things, and it's usually one thing, and that's one of the things we really focused on, is to try to create as many different layers so that if one thing is overcome, like say for example you have an armed person at a school, and use the Nashville example. The person came through the front door, and the armed person, is in the gymnasium or out to lunch in the, back, area, whatever. And all this stuff is unfolding in the front. You have just that one person, and they're tasked with being the safety for the whole school. That's a problem. So that's why we look at it from as many different lenses as possible and create as many safe options for everybody in the school, regardless of where it starts. We've really tried to hit on that and what if it to death over our, the last 8 years we've been working on the concept.
And it's unnoticeable to the kids. Like, they're not going into school and seeing these armed people in front of them and being like, why are they here? What are they doing? I mean, this is like a simple button on the wall that's like not that big deal to them. So
we're trying to balance aesthetics for safety with, so you don't see that, because we don't want people to come in and go, look, we're walking into a prison or some kind of a military base. It's we make everything usable in the school so that it fits well, and most people won't even know it's there. That's definitely something that we've had a lot of conversations on over the last few years.
So it seems like this is a no-brainer for schools. Like every school should have this. This should be the standard.
mm-hmm.
I imagine that the biggest hurdle is the cost. Where's the money come from? Which I think could potentially lead us into, you guys have the last I heard, you had a bill working its way through the Capitol. Can you guys update us on that or share a little bit about sort of what you guys are pushing for?
Yeah, the bill's out of our hands. That's we walked a couple of legislators through, and they absolutely asked that question, why isn't this everywhere? And they decided to do something about it. And kudos to them. But that we don't really have any control over that. If it passes, great, it's awesome. If it doesn't, it's kind of where we're at. And where we're at right now is, so we just met with a charter school, and we have a guy who does our grants, or he researches grants and everything else. Right now he's looking for grants for the charter school to have a complete system put in there. And there's a lot of money for this topic in grants, both state and federal, that never get touched. It's people can do it if they know how to research for it. The first school we did, they raised the money on their own within 5 weeks. They went to the parents. It was a priority for the parents. They wanted their kids safe, and they raised it on their own. And that's the nice part about private schools is I think parents' involvement is much more active in those schools. But there was one thing that we didn't really cover, and we look at the before and the after as well as the during. So our system focuses on that 5 to 10 minute window of something really bad is happening. When I was a school resource officer, what I learned there, relationships is so important between teachers and students, police and students, adults and students. In my role as a school resource officer, I literally became like a surrogate father to some of these kids, a big brother. And you create those relationships, you get to know them. And to me, that is invaluable in preventing something to happen. And then on top of it, we've also partnered with Michelle Frauenschuh, who owns Life Development Resources, which is a counseling service that just strictly deals with court-appointed kids. So she deals with the homicidal, suicidal type mindsets, and so she brings in that risk assessment side to things and behavioral sides to things, and that's part of our teaching as well. So to kind of go full circle, our system is really holistic. It's not the, let's solve this, let's just give everybody a gun. It's the before, it's the prevention, it's the mental health, it's the during, it's the response from both the police and the teachers, and then it's the aftermath. If something happens in your building, what's your plan look like? Where's your staging areas? What's the reunification process look like? What resources are going to be available to you? You see a 5-minute clip on the news and it looks like, oh, another school shooting. There's months of stuff that went into that 5 minutes, and you don't see how big it truly is. So that's one of the big frustrations with these. I have an idea, let's do this. You are not seeing the big picture on everything that goes on behind the scenes. And that's something that I think we pride ourselves in, is looking at this from a totalistic point of view and not a one trick. Here's a thought. Let's give Tom a gun here.
Well, you're not.
We're fine.
Yeah, you're not emotionally reacting to something that just happened. You have years and years and decades of experience and research and development into a product that is safe and here for the schools. Where a lot of the headlines and things that I see on social media, I mean, yes, as a parent, like I totally get it. It's heartbreaking, but they're all emotional reactions to something and solutions that their emotions are telling them is the best solution for whatever just happened.
What I admire
exactly
about that, Jason, what I admire about what you just said is that that's proactive, not reactive, and that's top of the funnel. Mm-hmm. The system, it sounds like, is sort of bottom of the funnel. It's like if we can't get to them before in their brains, they're going to get through the funnel, and we have a plan for that too. But the plan is to maybe not even let it get to that point. And that's maybe something that should be talked about more, is the mental side of it. Because my question is, and yes, at the beginning, it's like, shoot, these things have been happening for hundreds of years. Are we ever going to stop this?
Unfortunately, our society right now is, we're having a lot of issues with, mental health, mental illness, and I don't see that problem going away anytime soon, and it's gotten a lot worse. So we're not going to be able to fix that necessarily, but we can provide options and tools for different schools and businesses to deal with that and have a plan. Like, Jason had briefly touched on like the threat assessment, some of that sort of stuff. I mean, if a school has a problem children, they're starting to see some red flags. A lot of the schools don't even know what to do. How am I going to address this? And so we provide them some tools and some training and some options on how to address, a child who is going to be potentially, the next active shooter, and what are they going to do with that? Are we getting into the legal system, the criminal justice system, or is this something we can deal with just at the school level? So, there's a lot of different things happening, but, we don't have control over what's happening in our society, but we can certainly provide some options for, schools and businesses now to deal with this problem as it stands.
I think right now too much energy is being put into mental health, to be honest with you. It's not the cure-all, and I don't think there is a cure-all, but there's a best practices, and just to focus on mental health, I think is short-sighted and not. You can't prevent everything. I mean, the last two, there's no mental health professional in those schools that would have prevented it, because those people did not go to those schools at the time of the shooting. So how do you prevent somebody that you don't even know exists? So it can't just be that one trick pony. And I say one trick pony on the mental health side as well, because that's just one layer.
Yep. Which is awesome, because your system has a multi-layer effect to make sure that you are speaking to any of these. Like if it's someone outside of the building, someone inside the building, someone related to the building, but you don't know about them.
When you said the Covenant one, they wouldn't have even got in the door. Is that because of the glass that you guys? Because didn't
combination of
Yep.
It's a combination of stuff.
Yeah, we have some tools for the vestibule. We have different, glass protection type products. We have different door security products, things like that. But yeah, if you see that last one in Nashville, the person shot through the glass and just basically walked right into the school through through the glass. So we have an answer for that too. So going back to that, go ahead, Jason.
There's also a proactive
measure
involved in that as well.
Going back to the Nashville deal, that really spooked them. And so when we were down there here just a couple weeks ago, that got their attention, and they have definitely a different approach to safety than it seems like there is around here. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it was, going back to the private school versus public school topic that Jason kind of slightly addressed here. But they really value safety. They want to take proactive measures to keep their kids safe. And sometimes we get kind of frustrated around here that it's just we don't have the same mentality around here with that. I'm not sure what the answer is.
A lot of people probably have that idea of like, it's not going to happen. Like, it's not going to happen in my school.
It's not going to happen here. Yep.
And then
complacency.
it does. And then their mentality around this whole thing changes. And it's like, it's too late.
Yep.
So if I'm a parent listening to this and I'm like, I want my kid's school in the state of Minnesota to have this system, I don't understand why they would pass on it. Is there anything that the public can do to assist your team when you're presenting some of these things to the districts?
Yeah, I think eventually I would like to see parents start going to their school boards and saying, why don't we have what Lakeville has? Or why aren't we taking the steps that these other schools are taking? What are you doing? Why is the referendum just for a swimming pool? Where's school safety? Parents working in the public sector my entire life, I can tell you that the squeaky wheel does get the loop. And if it's not vocalized, it's not addressed. I've had educators tell me that if the fire code wasn't in place, that educators would take their chances on not having a fire then. So the parents need to be vocal that their kids' safety is number one, and you demand to do something. And a year ago, I wouldn't have said this, but I'm getting a little frustrated with it, and I don't understand why. You can't have a learning environment without a safe learning environment. And to me, sports and the playground and everything else comes after safety. Safety comes first, and then you can have the fun stuff, but you have to create that safe learning environment first. And you mentioned something earlier that you guys are real estate agents and you guys do like classes and stuff. Okay, so one of my articles that I've written, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but if I were to sell my house, I don't know my head from my ass about how to do that. I would need somebody like you guys to guide me through it and list it and all that stuff. So I would call you guys and say, hey, I need help here. I don't know what to do. This topic, for some reason, there's 10,000 experts out there, 100,000 experts out there on this topic, when in reality, they don't have a clue what to do. It's like if I wanted to put an indoor pool in my backyard, calling my accountant. I don't expect him to be in my backyard, but for whatever reason, public safety in general, and this is everybody becomes an expert really quick, and that gets frustrating. It's kind of a lack of respect or disrespect that, we don't need all that stuff. We can just, get visitor management and, stay in your lane, folks.
Yep. I agree. Well, and parents, one, they need to raise their voices, and two, they're the taxpayers in that community if they choose to send their kids to the public school. So they have a vested interest to know where the money is being spent, and they should know where it's being spent. And perhaps that's why you've had such success on the private sector, is because these parents, they have a vested interest, they're present, and they're attending some of these meetings and aware of what the school is making their decisions on. And safety is number one. Who wouldn't? You think about all the daycares. If you choose to send your babies to daycares, how many daycares you interview? What's the first thing you look for or ask for? Safety. Are they CPR certified? Do they understand? Are there little toys around with infants crawling on the floor? You look for all these things. And then it's like, well, now that they're 5, that goes away. No, they're still a child. And their number one priority is to be learning, and you want that to be a focus for them, and you don't want to worry every time you drop your kid off at school.
Yep. And I can tell you, and Pete can maybe comment, but I actually can feel it. When we go into a private school or charter school or a public building, you can actually feel the caring that these school administrators have, that they are very concerned. They want to get it done. They want to get it done right. They want to do everything they can within their power to keep these children safe. And you can feel the love. I mean, like the love for these kids in there. And it's not the same in other entities. But it goes back to just do the right thing the first time. You know, let's get this out of the way, and then let's focus on other stuff. But
right.
I think bottom line is parents definitely need to be more vocal. I think that's been a little bit of an issue now. I mean, and pay attention to where that money is going. I mean, it seems like, that you spend money on all of these other things and it gets hidden in all these other agendas, and it's not going to where it should be going. And, parents really are in the driver's seat to, steer the school boards and whatnot to make safety a priority.
Do you have any active
and
petitions, or can they reach out? Can they email their local legislator? Like, is there, what's the action item for someone listening to this that's like demanding it now? What can they do today?
Call your local legislator,
Oh,
call your school board people, call your superintendent, find the decision makers and challenge them. I mean, they need a call to action, and they need parents to, and it can't be just one. I mean, parents need to kind of rally together and say, you know what, enough's enough here. You guys been spending money on this and this, and we continually overlook the safety part, and we want our kids safe.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it has to be our system. I'm saying that as a father and a police officer of almost 3 decades, that I want to see kids safe. It's not about money. It's about, I think our system will minimize loss of life better than anything that's out there, but just do something. And yeah, I'm saying it because something needs to be done, because nobody's doing nothing to fix it. And what's the definition of insanity? Keep trying to fix a problem with the same response and you get the same results. It's like, we are literally being insane right now.
Right. Yeah, and I know from a real estate perspective, we have families moving into Lakeville, building in Lakeville, looking at Lakeville as their point of interest for their family. And we, as real estate agents, can only provide factual information. It cannot be opinion-based. You cannot steer someone to purchase a home in one city versus another city. That your system, though, that it is now in the public Lakeville public schools, is factual information is out there on the internet that we're able to provide our families. And I can tell you the amount of relief that some of these families are feeling, especially after the most recent Nashville tragedy, is, I mean, if they look at the value of their home in Lakeville, like, I'm willing to pay that, knowing that my kid is going to go to a school with this system in place. That adds value to them. So it may not be directly related to the property, but it's where the property sits, which is a really cool thing for us to witness and see that your system is providing value in real estate, because these families want to live in a community where if they choose to send their kid to a public school, that is going to be in place. And I know some private schools around, the South Metro also have that. So
I've talked to a variety of people lately, and they start, when they start seeing these things being sensationalized on the news, all these, violent encounters, now they're starting to question whether or not, what do they want to do with, education for their child? Do they want to homeschool them? Are they going to put them in a private school? Are they going to put them in a public school? And these are questions that I don't think they probably necessarily thought too much about back when until more recently. And so now it's a serious concern for parents. When I go drop my kid off in the school, what's going to happen today? Are they going to come home at the end of the day? And so we're trying to, give them some relief that, when you bring your kids to this school where this system's at, they're going to be much safer than they would be otherwise.
By the way, that comment you just said made me feel proud. Thank you for saying that. And sounds like we're helping you make money, so that might be an issue.
Well, and
like you,
and-
it's not necessarily the money that's
no, but personally, I mean, the statement you just made, we had that conversation a couple years ago. We have 3 young children, and that was never really a topic of conversation for us, or we never anticipated it. And we made our decision based on a variety of things, but the system being one of them. So when it came up at Rotary and Trent was able to tour, we got all geeked out and excited because that actually was a value that we looked at when we were making decisions for our family.
Yeah, it's setting a new standard, right? It's one thing to be a good school. Now you have to be a good school and a safe school.
And we talked to some of the admin there when they give tours to parents, potential parents, and I think their waiting list has gone through the roof. Since this has happened. In fact, I was told they're going to be expanding. But anyway,
yep,
they can give a tour now when parents ask about safety. Before it was a 30-second clip of we do run, hide, fight training. Now it's a 45-minute walkthrough on all these different layers of the school, where parents can actually physically see the lengths they went to make sure their kids are safe. And if I'm a parent, I mean, I'm sold right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's not an amount of money that you can put on my child's safety. Like, it's just, I want them to learn and grow. Focus on that. Focus on my kid.
Yeah.
Focus on all the good that schools do for our youth. And safety is an expectation. And the fact that that's not necessarily put at the front of the or at the top of the priority list when it comes to decision making is sad.
When we've done the trainings at both the public and the private schools, just the comments we get from the teachers after they've gone through and actually done what they're supposed to do. We kind of didn't really talk a whole lot about this, but the communication piece that we have also with the system, the teachers are hearing what's going on real time, and they know what's going on in their school, and they can make decisions for their kids accordingly. And when we get all done with the training, the teachers, talk about, well, I feel more relieved that I know what this is going to be like if we ever have to encounter a horrible situation like this. And so it's reassuring for us to hear, the confidence that the teachers have, because, the teacher, if they feel confident about their system, they're going to be better teachers with those kids, So that was one piece we really didn't hit on too much on the communication piece, but again, there's a lot of parts to it. We're not going to get into all that, but there is a communication piece too that's really important with our system.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, we can probably start to wrap up here. I think this would be a great conversation to revisit in 6 months, 12 months, see how you guys are doing, see if you've had progress getting it into some of these other districts. Is there anything else you guys want to add that we didn't talk about, and kind of let you guys go?
I think it's great that you're bringing this up, and that you're highlighting the importance of this topic, and highlighting what parents can do. I think that's a really important piece by just having this podcast. So, Jason, do you have something too?
I have one thing that you can use to edit in, if you don't mind. It's I didn't want to rip on public schools so bad, but actually, whatever.
There's more seats at the table.
I think you said it gingerly.
Yes.
The going back to the definition of safety and security, that's where I think a lot of problems lie. There's a lot of people that believe cameras are security, or that vestibule visitor management is security, and they'll tell parents, we have security cameras. That's been the answer for 20 years, that we got a new security system. It's cameras. I can tell you that I have never stopped a homicide from happening because of a camera. We've solved the homicide from a camera, but it's not security. It's investigative tools. The visitor management system is only as good as the person that's controlling that, and it's only as good as the vestibule is fortified. It's a day-to-day operation. It is not security. So when you see a lot of these people saying, no, we have security, I would venture to argue that you think you do, but you don't. And until something happens in a lot of these cases is when they finally wake up and said, yeah, that wasn't enough.
And it's too late.
And then they'll do it.
Phone
Kind of
apps.
sad too. Our phone rings after Tennessee. Our weeks got really busy. I mean, and I question these people around this country, like, why don't you do this when it's quiet? You know, why does it go, okay, there's an incident, everybody feels sad and it's horrible and it sucks. And then there's, you know, a call to action, like we need to do something. And then it's 8 months of gun control. I mean, nothing's getting done. It's this continual cycle and it needs to be broken.
Yep.
Yep.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you for giving us the tools as parents if we want to speak up to our districts and local legislators and let them know what our priority is as parents when we are making decisions for our kids to attend schools.
Yep.
So thank you.
We will
Thank
spread
you.
wildfire. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for having us.
Yes, of
Appreciate
course.
it.
Have a
Have a
wonderful
great
day.
day. Thank
Bye.
you. You too.
See you guys.